Amazing revelation. Little girl exposes the CEO's unexpected forgery of her family's will. Transformation begins. Lily pushed aside dusty boxes as she navigated the shadowy attic, the musty smell of aged wood filling her lungs. Her fingers grazed the uneven surface of another crate, heart pounding with curiosity. What secrets lay hidden in the remnants of her grandfather's life? Each artifact held a story. Yet unease clinged to her thoughts, the weight of loss still lingering 3 years after his passing. She needed to find something, anything, that could lift the heavy veil of sorrow from her mother's eyes. As she yanked off the lid of a weathered box, a jolt of excitement coursed through her. Inside, yellowed papers overflowed, revealing old photographs, letters, and there it was, an ominous-looking document marred by age and neglect. A will? Her heart raced, the implications invading her mind. Did it mention anything about their family home, or perhaps provide hope for the financial strain they faced since her grandfather's passing? She pieced together a torn page that hinted at something more. Forgotten wealth waiting to be claimed. But excitement fizzled when she hurried downstairs, breathless with anticipation, clutching the document against her chest. "Mom, look what I found!" Her voice exuberant. Sarah glanced up from the kitchen, where she carefully scrutinized the flickering bills stacked on the counter. The spark in Lily's eyes faded when she noticed her mother's discomfort, a fleeting tightening of her jaw, a quick intake of breath. "Oh, honey, it's probably just old paperwork," Sarah said, gently dismissing her. The silence hung heavy, suffocating. Lily saw shadows dancing in her mother's eyes, pain etched into her features as thoughts of their crumbling finances loomed. A bitter chill surged through Lily. This was more than just old documents. Something deep and unsettling, rooted in their history, was striving to surface. A nagging instinct tugged at her, whispering that something wasn't right. Turning away, she felt a storm brewing within. What if uncovering this truth held the key to a better future? What if it brought light to the dark corners of their family's past? But fear wove itself around her heart like a vice. What if she was wrong? What if digging deeper only tore open old wounds? Before she could spiral into doubt, she recalled the stories of her grandfather, a hard-working man who never shied away from confrontation. With courage bubbling beneath her skin, she resolved to uncover the past. Yet, looming over her decision was Robert, the ruthless CEO. Each whispered name sent shivers down her spine, a reminder of the unscrupulous world she knew little about. Would she be able to stand against him? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days passed, each a relentless cycle of digging deeper into the truth while balancing the weight of expectation. Lily felt married to that box of documents. It whispered to her in the gnarled shadows of the attic. Between frantic searches for evidence, she found herself befriending Mr. Thompson, her elderly neighbor. There was a strange comfort in his knowing eyes, a sense that he understood, perhaps remembering his own battles with systems that sought to swallow good people whole. As they sifted through legal jargon, the hidden depths of her family's legacy revealed themselves. Tension coiled like a serpent, wrapping tighter with each fragile piece of information they unearthed. Would she dare confront Robert? Clenching her fists, Lily felt her anxiety turn into determination. The thought of facing him sent a shiver down her spine. Could her petite frame withstand the might of the corporate giant? With the weight of generations resting on her small shoulders, Lily took a deep breath, battling the rush of self-doubt. The stakes soared, intertwining with her fears, armorless and vulnerable. But the pull from her grandfather's spirit urged her on. It whispered courage amidst the chaos. The moment approached, a confrontation destined to unravel everything. Would she reveal the truth, or would fear silence her? The air thickened with anticipation, building towards a confrontation that could change everything. One single thought echoed in her mind. Little girls could wield more power than people imagined. The time to reclaim her family's legacy was fast approaching. With the document now safely tucked under her arm, Lily found herself pacing the small kitchen at home, the weight of her discovery pressing against her chest. Each step felt like a march towards something monumental, yet the echo of uncertainty shadowed her. She needed a plan, a way to confront Robert that wouldn't leave her crumpled in defeat. The realization that she was just a girl against a corporate titan pressed like a physical force, but within her brewed a complex cocktail of fear and determination. Days turned into nights of sleepless plotting. The documents lay spread across her dining table, yielding stories of her family's past, but also generational strengths she had yet to discover. Mr. Thompson became her ally, often reminding her with a twinkle in his eye that her grandfather had resisted injustices just like Robert's. "You have more of his spirit in you than you know, Lily," he had said earnestly, and for the first time she began to believe there was truth to his words. That night, as she sipped on lukewarm tea, a revelation pierced through the fog in her mind. What if the confrontation didn't need to be about aggression, but about ownership? She could spin the narrative differently. She had the means to illuminate her family's plight and expose the misconduct. Perhaps she could gather evidence and frame it all in a way that he would have to reckon with. The next day, she returned to the attic, throwing herself into the search for corroboration. As she sifted through documents, each piece began weaving a tapestry richer and deeper than she had imagined. Amidst the remnants of old contracts, dated photos, and love letters, she found a sealed envelope containing correspondence between her grandfather and other key figures from the past. Each letter hinted at connections, networked influences that expanded beyond her family's immediate struggles. Once startled by the vastness of it all, a newfound clarity bloomed. It was not just about the house. It was about dignity, family pride, and the right to fight for what belonged to them. She grabbed her phone, fingers shaking as she opened a search engine, reaching out for records that could strengthen her claim, intending to create a catalog of evidence that would bring Robert's duplicity into the light. By the end of that week, Lily felt a ripple of change in herself, each new discovery reinforcing her resolve. She documented her findings meticulously, growing confident in her voice and choices. For the first time, she didn't see herself as merely her mother's daughter, but as a guardian of her family's legacy. A deep-seated anger bubbled within her. The thought of Robert's insatiable greed ignited something fierce, something that pushed her past hesitation into action. Yet darkness cloaked her journey. Each revelation brought along the shadows of anxiety, whispering doubts that she wasn't equipped for this battle. She stood on the brink of launching herself into a formidable world, the stakes rising higher, a precarious tightrope balancing truth against deception. The day for confrontation loomed fast. Her heart raced with anticipation every moment leading up to it. Yet in the quiet spaces, the realization dawned. She had changed. This journey had summoned a silent storm of fortitude. The girl who once felt insignificant had transformed into an unforce of will, desperate to reclaim not only her family's assets, but their very identity. When the time came to face Robert, she would not merely walk into his office as an unsuspecting intruder. She would confront him as a fierce architect of her own fate. The line was drawn, and her resolve was unyielding. As she stood before the mirror, propelled by the ghosts of her past, she whispered to herself, "Your legacy is bigger than fear." But even as she solidified her determination, a chilling reminder slithered through her mind. What if Robert had anticipated her every move? Would her quest for the truth unravel her before she could even begin? The moment of reckoning was closer than ever. She gripped the edge of the dining table, her mind racing with thoughts of what awaited her. The confrontation with Robert was coming, and she could practically feel the tension in the air crackling around her. Determination coursed through her veins as each piece of evidence piled higher in her mind. Yet, despite her resolve, she couldn't shake the nagging fear that perhaps she was underestimating the depth of Robert's deception. The next day, she meticulously assembled her evidence, printing out documents, letters, and photographs. Each artifact connected a thread of her family's past to the injustices they had faced. She arranged them in a binder, the weight of the booklet symbolizing her intent. She was no longer just a scared girl. She was a force driven by purpose. As the evening approached, Lily invoked Mr. Thompson's spirit. If he had shown such courage in the face of powerful adversaries, then so could she. It was more than just a fight for the family home. It was about restoring their dignity and legacy. Her heartbeat thrummed in her ears with every thought of the impending confrontation soon to unfold. The next morning, she sat in her car outside Robert's towering glass office building, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. The city bustled around her, people lost in their own worlds, but for her, time seemed suspended on the edge of a monumental moment. She rehearsed her words silently, each sentence a steel beam against her uncertainty. As she stepped into the lobby, the sleek, modern design of the building felt both intimidating and empowering. She passed through security, swallowed by a sea of corporate insignia, reminders of Robert's power looming over her. Yet, each step she took further into this alien realm transformed her trepidation into an electric current of purpose. When she reached Robert's office, the receptionist greeted her with a polished smile. "May I help you?" This was it. "I have a meeting scheduled with Mr. Blake," Lily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Just a moment." The receptionist picked up the phone, and Lily felt herself racked with a moment of self-doubt. But just as quickly, she remembered the evidence in her binder, whose significance solidified her sense of purpose. She had fought too hard to turn back now. Seconds later, the receptionist gestured for her to enter, and Lily stepped into the office where Robert sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the bustling city below. He looked up, surprise flickering across his formidable features, quickly replaced by a practiced mask of indifference. "Lily," he started, a hint of condescension lacing his tone, "what brings you here?" "I need to talk to you about the family estate," she said, a quiver of resolve underlying her words. The time for small talk was over. She had come to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Robert leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a condescending smile creeping across his face. "Is that so? And what exactly do you think you can do?" Lily inhaled deeply, holding his gaze, feeling the weight of the documents pressed against her side. "I know the truth, Robert, about the forgery, about the lies." The moment hung thick with tension, his eyes narrowing slightly in disbelief. The surprised flash of emotion on his face fueled her dawning confidence. With the weight of generations behind her, Lily poised herself for what could easily become the most critical moment of her life, and all of it steadily led to this pivotal confrontation. But as she prepared to unveil the evidence that could crumble his empire, a chilling thought sliced through her fervor. Had Robert already anticipated her dossier of documents? How much did he know? A sense of urgency gripped her as they stared each other down, each silently weighing the stakes of what was about to unfold. In that instant, she knew this was no longer a battle over property. It was a war over truth and justice, one that could shake the very foundations of their realities. Lily felt the air thicken around her as Robert's eyes narrowed. The moment stretched infinitely, and she could hear the muted pulse of the city outside, a stark contrast to the tension forging within the confines of this opulent office. Focusing on each heartbeat, she summoned the resolve coursing through her. This was more than a familial dispute. It was her arena, her chance to dismantle the carefully constructed facade that Robert had built over decades. Mere letters and documents can't just sway the kind of influence I hold, Robert scoffed, leaning slightly forward, his playful arrogance masking the crack of uncertainty in his voice. The corners of his mouth turned downwards, revealing the threat hidden behind his practiced demeanor. Her heart surged, propelling her forward through the tempest of fear and doubt that threatened to engulf her. "You think you can silence the truth, Robert?" She found strength in the reality of her words, a budding realization that his bravado was not a shield, it was a potential chink in his armor. "These documents connect you to actions that can't simply be dismissed." She unfolded the first page of her binder with precise movements, each crisp line of evidence stark against the polished surface of his desk. "Look at this letter, and this signature. It's not my grandfather's, it's yours." Robert's expression morphed into a mask of anger, but she continued, her voice unwavering. "You thought you could manipulate my family's legacy without anyone noticing?" Fact after fact rolled off her tongue like a well-practiced speech, and as she laid the final piece before him, a photograph revealing his past interactions with unscrupulous associates, his composure began to falter. He raised a hand, cutting through her momentum. "You've done your homework, haven't you? But they won't believe a little girl against a well-respected CEO." The edge in his voice was his final attempt to regain control, but even he couldn't disguise a flicker of anxiety creeping into his eyes. "Who said anything about being a little girl?" she shot back, and for the first time since she entered his office, she took a breath thick with belief. "I'm your equal in this fight, Robert." The words settled in the air between them, a declaration of her agency, her growth into a woman ready to reclaim her family's legacy. The brief silence was filled with an electricity, both palpable and exhilarating. She felt herself shifting from confrontational to strategic, the gears of her mind whirring as potential paths unfurled. Here lay an opportunity she had not expected, to leverage Robert's desperation against him. "You're not untouchable, no matter how hollow your throne may seem. It wouldn't take much for this information to surface to the boardroom." His eyes hardened at her implication, as if weighing the ramifications of her words. Determination pulsed within her. Each piece of evidence not only revealed his past, but also illuminated her own transformation from victim to victor. Every meticulously crafted word didn't merely present findings, they were empowered declarations of autonomy, signaling a newfound understanding of her worth. Suddenly, Robert's facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the carefully polished veneer. "You really think you can pressure me?" The moment felt charged with possibilities. Had she successfully pressed a button that would force Robert to reconsider his path of deception? Or was he merely biding his time, waiting for the opportune moment to retaliate? The stakes had never felt higher, and as tension pulsed in the air, a singular question nagged at the edge of her mind. What lay beyond this confrontation? She could feign ignorance, retreat to safety, or push her advantage, step directly into the eye of the storm. The battle was about more than just money or property. It was a reckoning over character, legacy, and the endurance of truth. And as the moments slipped through her fingers, it became evident that this was only the beginning. The time had come not just to stand against her adversary, but to truly understand her own power. Whether she emerged victorious or defeated rested heavily on what she would dare to do next. Lily felt the walls around her pulse with potential, a series of pathways unfolding under her feet, each promising a different future. But the true test awaited, hiding in layers of deceit that began to unravel. Would she dare to confront the full extent of Robert's treachery, and what would that mean for her? Lily could sense uncertainty lingering, but it was chemistry that ignited a spark of curiosity. What secrets still lay buried, waiting to break free? Lily felt the critical weight of Robert's penetrating gaze, each second extending like an eternity as she fought to maintain her composure. In this standoff, every challenge surged through her veins. This was a defining moment, and she had too much to lose to falter now. Time seemed to stand still, the silence heavy as she processed Robert's growing agitation. He was not the impenetrable fortress he once appeared to be. The evidence had begun to sculpt cracks in his bravado. It was invigorating yet terrifying to realize how far she had evolved from the timid girl who had first stepped into his office, grappling with a sense of inadequacy. She was no longer stepping into shadows. She was creating her own light. "You think your little threats mean something," Robert sneered, but the tension told another story. "You have no allies here. Everyone knows you're just a child of privilege." Something inside her snapped. She had spent too long hiding behind familial connections. "I'm not just my grandfather's granddaughter." The words burst forth, fueled by anger. Each syllable was a declaration of independence that sliced through his dismissive attitude. "I've done my research. I've made my connections. I am a force to be reckoned with." Robert's dismissive laughter echoed hollowly, but doubt was creeping into his expression as she leaned into her momentum. She was transforming her anxiety into power. Every shred of evidence she had amassed was not just a tool to confront him, it was a message to herself that she wielded her own worth. "Who do you think you're fooling? You want to hold on to this board with threats?" Robert's bravado dwindled. "Take it from someone who's been there. Power speaks louder than truth." But as she gathered her thoughts, a whirlpool of strategy and boldness, Lily felt the stirrings of a plan. Perhaps power is something you'll lose if those truths come to light. The glint in her eyes matched the steel in her voice. "What if I brought this to your board, your investors? How do you think they'd react, knowing their CEO is involved in forgery?" As she laid the foundations of her argument, her pulse quickened with hints of strategy. He relied on fear, but she was wearing a new armor, a blend of courage and calculation. With each point she navigated, carefully articulating potential fallout, she began to see Robert not only as an adversary, but as an opportunity for transformation. If she could somehow dismantle him, she might also dismantle the walls she'd wrapped around her heart. "Let's be real." A newfound intensity ignited her expression. "Your empire stands on shaky ground. One wrong step and it all crumbles." His lips tightened, and for a moment she caught a flicker of humanity, a glimpse of vulnerability hidden beneath layers of arrogance. That was her inroad. In that fleeting moment of insight, she could feel all her internal battles coalescing into purpose. "Let's be real." A newfound intensity ignited her expression. "Your empire stands on shaky ground. One wrong step, and it all crumbles." His lips tightened, and for a moment she caught a flicker of humanity, a glimpse of vulnerability hidden beneath layers of arrogance. That was her inroad. In that fleeting moment of insight, she could feel all her internal battles coalescing into purpose. Let's be real, a newfound intensity ignited her expression. Your empire stands on shaky ground. One wrong step, and it all crumbles. His lips tightened, and for a moment she caught a flicker of humanity, a glimpse of vulnerability hidden beneath layers of arrogance. That was her inroad. In that fleeting moment of insight, she could feel all her internal battles coalescing into purpose. Perhaps Robert wasn't merely a monstrous figure. Perhaps he was indicative of the challenge that awaited her in the professional sphere beyond this office, a challenge enveloped in layers of menacing power and uncertain integrity. Yet, beneath her aggression lay a hidden treasure, a budding sense of self-discovery and tactical awareness. In confronting Robert, she was not merely staking a claim to her grandfather's legacy, but forging her own identity, stepping decisively into the marketplace not just as kin, but as a formidable player. The moment crescendoed into a thick silence once more, temporary camaraderie forged in the fires of their confrontation. But beneath the surface, war drums echoed. This was not a moment of resolution. It was merely a prelude to broader battles that awaited her. Would she advance her burgeoning strength even further, unearthing even darker secrets? Or would the consequences of her audacity push her back into obscurity? As Robert stewed in his thoughts, Lily glanced out the high office window, reflecting the twinkling city lights that somehow mirrored the glimmer of opportunity ahead. The city pulsed with chaos and promise, and she felt determined to reclaim not just her family's legacy, but her very identity from within its depths. Battling against Robert was just the first act. Would she be able to face the hidden complexities of her legacy and emerge victorious? Or had she stirred a storm that was more than she could brave? The answers loomed just ahead, but could she confront what awaited her as the layers of deception peeled back? Lily's heart raced with newfound resolve as she turned away from the stark reflection in the glass. The confrontation had catalyzed something within her, a potent mix of fear and clarity. No longer did the specter of her inheritance intimidate her. It became a driving force, a clarion call for action. Yet, as she stepped back from her showdown with Robert, she grappled with the reality of the path she had unleashed. Power, she had learned, was not merely about holding on to privilege, but wielding it with intelligence and integrity. She paced slowly, her thoughts swirling through the implications of her confrontation. The board meeting was imminent, the perfect arena to play her cards. The clock was ticking, and she needed to assemble her evidence carefully, like pieces in a strategic game of chess. Lily understood that to dismantle Robert, she had to position herself both as a contender and a protector of her family's legacy. This wasn't just personal, it was monumental, a chance to redefine what her legacy meant. Flashes of doubt crept in. Was she truly ready to navigate the treacherous waters that accompanied such a move? The memory of Robert's sneer haunted her. She needed allies, and those allies might not be who she presumed. She brought to mind the whispered conversations among her colleagues. Could she draw on their dissatisfaction with Robert's leadership? All those half-finished discussions at the water cooler about the mismanagement and the lack of transparency began to paint a potential roadmap through treachery. Search for alliances began then and there. Lily made a mental note to reach out to the people she'd met at networking events, ones who whispered doubts about the direction of her family's company under Robert's regime. They had no idea of the chaos brewing beneath the surface, yet they are her potential backers. Trust was essential. She had to be careful with her choices. Would they rally behind her ambitions, or would they feel the ground tremble at the notion of opposing a giant like Robert? Each step towards her desk felt like a step deeper into a vortex of determination. She flipped open her laptop and began compiling the research she had gathered. Quotes, financial records, correspondences. Each bit of data forming a tapestry of deceit that Robert had woven. The more she delved, the clearer her purpose became. She wasn't merely fighting for a board position. She was crafting a pathway to equity and addressing the moral implications of Robert's actions. With a fierce determination, she began writing down her arguments for the board meeting. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, driven by adrenaline and the evocation of confidence. The tactics she planned to employ showcased not just her will, but her competence. Each point she developed pulled her further from the self-doubt of her former self, towards an emerging identity, one that didn't just echo the voice of power, but carved its own niche of authenticity. As evening descended outside the towering office complex, a surge of energy enveloped her. She was tapping into something larger than her family's legacy. It was about integrity in corporate governance, about rooting out corruption where it lurked. The conversations with potential allies began to fill her mind, transforming whispers into fortitude. But as she hit save on her preliminary outline, a tightening knot of anticipation gripped her stomach. Would her allies remain loyal when the storm hit? And what of Robert? What lengths would he go to protect his empire? Engaging in this high-stakes game meant stepping into a spotlight that bore the weight of expectations. A spotlight that could just as easily expose her vulnerabilities as it could illuminate her strengths. Resolutely, she glanced at the clock. The meeting was just days away, ticking closer with every breath. Within the confines of her own mind, she weighed the strategies that lay ahead, confronting the truths of her choices. Yet deep within, a question loomed large, demanding to be answered. What if she stepped too far, and the board, instead of backing her, turned against her? With the impending meeting just days away, she knew she was racing against time and decisions that could either build her up or tear her down. The ripples of her confrontation had barely begun to cascade through her life, and just as she prepared to rise to the occasion, another thought flared to life, unpredictably vibrant. Could she trust anyone in this brusque world of powerful positions? As those troubling uncertainties began to spin around her thoughts, one unmistakable truth crystallized. The day of reckoning was near. The time had come to face Robert, and chaos awaited. Lily woke early the next day, a fire in her chest igniting her resolve. The board meeting loomed closer, as did the reckoning she had prepared for. She cracked open her laptop, the screen illuminating the faint remnants of last night's frantic edits. She reviewed the meticulous documents one more time, ensuring her arguments were coherent, compelling, and backed by undeniable evidence. Her mind flashed back to Robert's dismissive smirk. She couldn't let that image define her journey. In the cool morning light, every detail pulsed with urgency. The folders she had compiled were not just organized data, they were a lifeline to reclaiming her family's legacy. Her fingers paused over the keyboard as her mind raced with the strategies she intended to employ during the meeting. Each tactic had to be calculated, not only how to present her points, but how to anticipate Robert's potential counters, his refusal to concede turf easily. After reviewing her files, a sudden instinct urged her to reach out to Emma, a fellow executive known for her keen insights and, more importantly, her doubts about Robert's leadership. Over the past months, Emma had shared moments of frustration over coffee, discussing the company's direction. Their conversations had always felt aligned, but this time it needed to evolve into something more ambitious. Lily decided to invite her for a lunch meeting. As she walked into the small cafe down the street, nerves fluttered in her stomach. She needed to convey not just her case against Robert, but also the gravity of the situation. Would Emma stand by her when the stakes were so high? The bell above the door chimed as Emma entered, her face brightening upon spotting Lily. They exchanged pleasantries, the sound of clinking mugs masked by the chatter of afternoon patrons. As they settled, Lily could sense the unease beneath the small talk, a prelude to the frank discussion awaiting. "Lily, you seem different today," Emma said, her tone encouraging but searching. "What's on your mind?" It was now or never. Lily took a deep breath and spoke from her heart, firmly but with an openness that invited Emma to engage. "I'm ready to confront Robert. I believe he's mismanaged key resources and possibly acted against our family's interests. I need allies if I'm going to make a stand." Emma leaned in, her gaze intent. "I've noticed some questionable decisions too. If you're serious about this—" "I am," Lily interjected, her voice steady. "I'm not just fighting for a seat at the table. I'm fighting for integrity, for the future of this company." A shared silence hung between them as Emma surveyed Lily's demeanor, the stakes becoming palpable. "Lily, I want to help, but you need to be careful. This isn't a simple game we're playing." Lily met her gaze with conviction, the flare of defiance hardening her resolve. "I know. But we are meant for more than just survival in this world. We have a responsibility to steer this company right." Emma's brow furrowed, weighing the risk. "It's risky, but if we can gather the right support, we might just have a fighting chance against him." The conversation continued, shifting from strategy to potential allies, until plans crystallized into actionable insights. Each shared thought transformed doubt into a burgeoning partnership, an unspoken pact formed between them. As they wrapped up the meeting, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She hadn't just confided in a colleague, she had taken a bold step towards uniting a faction within the boardroom. Yet, as her resolve solidified, a troubling realization struck. If Emma was willing to step into the light alongside her, who else might risk it alongside Robert? Back at her office, she prepared for the strategy session ahead of the board meeting. The looming specter of clash simmered, but her heart surged with newfound hope. She had elicited support. Still, the complexity of power didn't just lie in numbers. Trust was as fragile as glass. Would Emma remain steadfast when the stakes escalated beyond their current discussion? Just as she settled in for the night, the shadows of uncertainty re-emerged, coiling in the corners of her mind. The question now continued to plague her. Who truly had her back? She could feel the ticking clock. The confrontation was imminent. In the uneasy silence, the thought lingered. What would she do if those she leaned on faltered when the storm did hit? A rush of adrenaline surged through her. With defenders at her side, it was time to prepare for the oncoming battle. The stakes had never been clearer. The day of reckoning loomed ahead, and at that moment it struck her full force. She was fighting for more than a position. She was fighting for her identity. The air was tense in her office the next morning, punctuated only by the distant hum of the world moving on outside. Lily stared at the screen, her mind still racing from the decisions she had made with Emma. The potential repercussions of her actions weighed heavily on her. The thought of betrayal loomed larger than ever. Doubt clawed at her mind, but she fought back against it, knowing that she could not afford hesitation now. Her phone buzzed, shattering the stillness. It was Emma. "Can we meet early? I've got some information that you need to hear." With a racing pulse, Lily agreed and prepared herself mentally for what could be a game-changing conversation. Each moment spent waiting felt like a lifetime. She ran through various scenarios in her mind, each one more flawed than the last. Was her plan too bold? Did Emma find the wit to navigate their precarious gambit? When Emma arrived, her expression was serious, her usual lightness absent. "I spoke with some of the other board members. They're uneasy about Robert, but many are stuck. They believe he'll push back fiercely." Lily nodded, steeling herself. "We need to gain their trust. I can present a solid case, but we can't underestimate his influence." "I know, but there's something you must see first." Emma reached into her case and produced a document, handing it over with a sense of urgency. The papers trembled slightly in Lily's hand. "It's Robert's recent expenditure report. There are anomalies." Lily felt her breath hitch. Anomalies? Like what? "There are expenses that don't match up, projects signed off but unaccounted for. It looks like he's covering his tracks." Emma's voice was laced with concern. "If we expose this, it could support everything we're planning, but we have to be careful how we approach it. If he gets wind of this..." Lily felt the weight of what she held, the potential to shift the balance of power entirely. Yet a gnawing apprehension took root within her. What if it's a trap? How do we really know that this information is legitimate? Emma's gaze hardened. "We'll have to do some digging, but we can't ignore this. We have a chance, but it'll take a calculated risk." Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Lily thought about her father's legacy, the weight of her family's name that was on the line. She couldn't let doubt corrode her commitment to this fight. "All right, let's investigate further, but we have to be discreet. If Robert catches wind, we could lose everything." With a shared nod, a flicker of determination ignited between them. Together, they could shatter the facade Robert had built around himself. Yet amid Lily's resolve simmered a flicker of fear. Secrets hidden within secrets often revealed truths more dangerous than any overt confrontation. As the clock ticked forward, Lily began to formulate a plan that would not only defend her position, but dismantle Robert's dominance. With Emma's help, she would gather intelligence and build her case. But as she mapped out her approach, she had to confront another unsettling question. How far was she willing to go to secure her family's legacy? Her heartbeat quickened with each realization, underscoring the stakes at play. The moment of truth was approaching, and now she understood. This was not merely about confronting Robert. This was a deep unpacking of trust, betrayal, and personal ambition. If they treaded this fine line correctly, they stood to ignite a revolution within the organization. But as she processed their next steps, a new concern festered. Who else could be watching? As she entered the depths of conspiratorial risk, she sensed that their position was more precarious than they had anticipated. Was her own ambition gearing her up for a fall? With eyes fixed on the looming storm ahead, the harsh reality settled in. One misstep could lead to her ruin. Her resolve was unwavering, but the game's true nature remained shrouded in uncertainty. The board meeting was mere days away. They needed one final piece of the puzzle, and Lily's instinct clawed at her for answers. What was Robert truly hiding? In this calculating game of power, the truth, like a double-edged sword, might protect her or thrust her deeper into darkness. Now, more than ever, she needed every ounce of her cunning to stay ahead, because coming to light was the most dangerous part of the fight. Lily felt the pulse of the office thrum beneath her. Hours had turned into a tense neck of time, each tick of the clock a reminder of the high stakes at play. She paced back and forth, weighing her options, deliberating how to address the board in the upcoming meeting. Thoughts of Robert's scheming cast a shadow over her every strategy. Was it naive to think they could expose him? The magnitude of their intent was heavy, but the stakes felt intuitive. Safety, legacy, integrity, all intermingled in a fragile balance. "Lily!" Emma's voice broke through her introspection. The urgency audible in her tone jolted Lily back to the present. "I think we may have found something." Lily turned sharply, her heart racing, as Emma handed her a flash drive. "I managed to access some archived emails. It looks like Robert has been communicating with external vendors regarding those phantom projects he's been signing off on. There's a trail, and it leads us elsewhere." "Where?" Lily demanded, her pulse quickening. A surge of motivation coursed through her as Emma's unveiling hinted at a doorway to action. Some of these vendors have questionable ties.
If we can correlate their deals with Robert's disbursements, we could potentially uncover more than just discrepancies. This could link him to something much larger. Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement, yet something weighed heavy on her brow. Lily nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of Emma's deduction. The process of unearthing potential corruption began to shift from theory into action, yet it carried an enormous risk of exposure. We need to be meticulous if Robert senses that we are onto him. It's as good as over, Emma interjected. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. We have to gather all the data, piece it together, and prepare our briefing for the board meeting. That way they can't twist our narrative against us. Lily sat beside her, acutely aware of her surroundings, every office door an echo of paranoia. They were racing against time, and each moment felt saturated with danger. Recognizing this abyss of suspicion surrounding them sharpened her focus into a laser-like determination. She wouldn't let her fear dictate her route. As they uncovered information, hours became a blur.
The adrenaline rush blotted out the fatigue threatening to drag Lily down. The truth was within reach, and it enticed her with promises of power and reclamation, an intoxicating notion that called to the deepest parts of her ambition. But amidst the exhilaration, a creeping voice thrummed in her head. Was this worth the risk? With every truth they dug up, were they also unearthing parts of themselves that would change them irrevocably? The late afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows over her desk, an ominous reminder of the darkness their conspiracy could unleash. What if we're being watched? She wondered aloud, her voice low. We might inadvertently expose ourselves by pursuing this. Emma paused, her brow knit in thought. Then we have to be strategic about what we reveal and when. We cannot allow fear to freeze us. We need movement and agility. Taking a deep breath, Lily felt the ambivalence of her own chasing ambition swell within her. This was a moment to decide who she could become, and the answer wasn't purely professional, it was deeply personal. Could she balance the legacy of her family with this new and more anxious identity? The ground beneath her feet felt softer now, wading through an ethical swamp. Yet, as doubt crept in, she was also aware that this was her moment. The boardroom awaited her resolve. The stakes couldn't be clearer. We're going to make our mark, Emma. This isn't just about Robert. This is about reshaping our future and reclaiming faith. A knock on the office door interrupted her reaffirmation. They exchanged a glance, both on edge. It could be anyone. "Stay off the grid until we meet tonight," Lily whispered, nodding to Emma as she tucked the flash drives deeper into her bag. But the inkling of danger loomed ever closer, tangible and prickly. Whatever awaited them outside this fortified room could unravel everything they'd worked for. As they stepped into the corridor, a lingering question circling Lily's mind. What if someone had already taken notice? She pressed her lips together, heart pounding as shadows loomed ahead, and the clock continued its relentless countdown to the board meeting. The time had come for real confrontation, and far from mere internal strife, Lily now faced an unseen adversary that could turn this pivotal moment into chaos. Would the truth set her free, or was she too lost in a labyrinth of her own making? Lily stood before the full-length mirror in her room, her reflection staring back with a mixture of defiance and determination. This wasn't the same timid girl who had first set foot in Robert's office. This was a woman ready to reclaim her family's legacy. The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and with it, a surge of confidence flowed through her veins like electric current. As she prepared to step into the boardroom, memories of countless late-night strategy sessions with Emma replayed in her mind. With each passing day, she had transformed from an overwhelmed granddaughter seeking answers into a formidable force ready to confront deception. The shadow of doubt had been replaced by resolute purpose. She would no longer allow Robert to manipulate her family's legacy. When Lily entered the boardroom, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The polished tables gleamed under stark fluorescent lights, each board member taking their seats like pieces of a well-constructed chess game. Lily's heart raced as she surveyed the room, noting the steely dazes of Robert and other executives, each of whom, she knew, had something to lose. But today she wouldn't falter. The meeting commenced, a cacophony of conflicting opinions and self-serving agendas swirling about. Lily prepared herself, but just as she caught her breath, Robert's domineering voice swept across the room, attempting to drown out any counter-arguments. "We maintain our standing by prudently managing resources. These rumors of misconduct are simply distractions," he declared, his tone laced with derision. There was a brief silence as heads nodded in an attempt to suppress doubts in their CEO. But it was enough for Lily to seize her moment. "With all due respect, I believe there's a deeper issue at play," she spoke up, her voice cutting through the facade. The room shifted in her direction, and for the first time she felt powerful. "I've gathered information regarding some questionable expenditures and actions taken without board approval. I propose a transparent review." Gasps rippled through her fellow executives, and even Robert's mask slipped momentarily, revealing a flicker of concern. His presence had long remained unchallenged, and for a brief moment, Lily could see the validation of doubt etched in some of their faces. "You don't have the authority to demand a review," he snapped, narrowing his eyes. "This is nothing but a baseless accusation." As she unfurled the documents containing the proof, the detailed expenditures and communication that tied Robert to illicit dealings, the air seemed to thicken in the room. "These are not baseless, nor are they mere distractions. They show a trail that leads unmistakably back to you," she stated, her resolve unwavering. The tension in the room shifted palpably. Some members looked genuinely intrigued, while others appeared apprehensive, torn between loyalty and the urgency of exposing corruption. Each fact she presented felt like a building block anchoring her narrative in absolute authority. She had harnessed the spirit of her grandfather, channeling his courage and strength as she laid bare the deception before them. But Robert wasn't finished fighting. "You'll regret bringing this to light, Lily. Do you think you can take this to investors and have them believe a girl with no experience?" His threat hung ominously in the air, chilling the room with anticipation. Lily stood taller, the fire in her chest igniting.
"What I can't believe is that you've manipulated us all under the guise of leadership." The words escaped her lips like a rallying cry. "This isn't just about me. It's about preserving the integrity of our company. I owe it to my grandfather and to everyone who stood by him." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Whispers started to circulate as the weight of Lily's challenge sunk in. Those closest to Robert began to question the ethical standing he represented. It was no longer just about the family estate. It had turned into a matter of corporate ethics, loyalty, and personal conviction. In that moment, other executive members, like Emma, began to stand up for Lily's cause, echoing sentiments of honesty and responsibility, challenging the status quo that Robert had established. The tide was slowly turning, the balance of power swaying as the realization hit them collectively. They were willing to choose integrity over allegiance. Defeated and cornered, Robert could sense the shift. The assuredness that once radiated from him now morphed into desperation. "You're all making a mistake," he warned, but doubt tinged his voice, eroding the authority he once wielded so effortlessly. With the support of her newfound allies and the evidence dismantling Robert's narrative, Lily felt the trembling weight of fear lift. unveiling a clarity impossible to ignore. The voices of her colleagues grew louder around her, establishing a united front against deception. As the board meeting concluded, with Robert ultimately cast as the outlier, Lily walked away victorious, a testament to determination in the face of adversity. She had not only reclaimed her family's legacy, but she had also ignited a movement within the company, encouraging others to prioritize truth and integrity, forging a path for open dialogue and ethical governance going forward. Months later, the changes she and her supporters had championed reshaped the company's culture. New policies introduced transparency and accountability, and Lily took her rightful place at the forefront of these vital reforms, with dialogue fueling her leadership. She was no longer just a granddaughter wielding a will. She stood recognized as a competent leader, dedicated to restoring honor and dignity to her family name. With every small victory in the boardroom and a growing sense of fulfillment, she channeled her grandfather's spirit while transforming her own character in the process. The road hadn't been easy, but she felt a solid confidence permeate her being. Lily had proven her competence, conquered her fears, and emerged transformed into the person her family needed her to be. Now, as she gazed at the skyline towering over the city, she realized her journey had only just begun. There was still so much more she could accomplish, and the pulse of ambition thrummed in her veins. This was her legacy, her identity, and it was an honor she would uphold fiercely.
Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.